Greetings and welcome to the Be the Ultimate Assistant podcast with Bonnie and Vickie. I'm Vickie Sokol-Evans.
And I'm Bonnie Low-Kramen. Welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back.
We had a great part one with Ike Saunders and Julie Kavanaugh talking about the benefits of creating an external network, which they have done so brilliantly in Chicago with the organization called REACH. And so in part two of our talk with Ike and Julie, we're going to be talking about the nuts and bolts about how to do it. Actually, how to do this, how to get sponsors, how to get space, how to get people to show up. One of the pain points we're hearing around the world are no-shows, the challenge of no-shows, people who RSVP for an event and then don't come. So we're going to get into all of that. So Vickie, let's get started here.
Yeah, let's get started. Welcome back, Ike and Julie.
Thank you for having us back.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I'm going to kick it off with the first question for Julie. So tell us, we're going to talk about vendors or sponsors. How do vendors come to you to offer free space and food and goods and services to support REACH?
So when we first started, we obviously met on a very informal basis. We met like either in an office or in a restaurant, and it was just, as we mentioned, very small. We paid for like our drinks or our meals on our own right when we started. And then it started to grow where we would have people say, hey, I think our company would be interested in having the group. And so we started out doing a few events at companies, like literally in the office space.
Oh, so you're talking about the members would actually host it in their own company?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Gotcha.
And so we really started just to see that where it was still kind of small. It wasn't anything that we were pushing. If they reached out to us and offered that, we were like, yeah, that would be great. And then it gave us a chance just to see someone else's office. So we would do that, and then we would start kind of going out. At that point, we really didn't push anything. It was very casual, like, hey, let's get together, and we would choose like a restaurant or something to go to. What had started happening is like the management of the restaurants or the different venues would start coming up to us, and we would introduce ourselves, tell them who we were, sometimes, who we work for. Always made sure to get that person's business card that we met from the venue, and said thanks for the contact information, and we'll keep this because if we return, we'll definitely give you a call. Well, what has happened now really through word of mouth is through venues, or what's happening is assistants will be asked, hey, do you know of any type of a group that we could reach out to that we could host an event for, because we would really love to show them our space, what we have to offer. And they would be like, well, yes, I'm a member of an organization called REACH. And within this past year, that has really kicked off, and that is what is happening. We are not going out seeking the venues. They are hearing about us and coming to us. But you have to be patient with it because it's not something that happens. It doesn't happen overnight. It is just the word, and the people getting involved are talking about the organization and what those vendors can see from bringing in like a group. And it could be small, it could be large. And one of the things is that we do is when a venue reaches out to us, and it usually is through a member now that happens, is they'll be introduced to Ike and I basically through email, and we will coordinate either a conference call, or we'll email, or actually we'll do a sit-down with the vendor and explain to them really what REACH is and the return on investment results that they would get by hosting us. And what they also do is it really helps vetting the members, and it gets the members involved, and they take a lot of pride and saying, hey, I put Reach leadership team in contact with this venue, and it's just a sense of empowerment with those people as well. And we offer to the venues, say, we don't provide or give out contact information, but one way that you can collect it, and it's entirely up to you, is to do some type of drawing, like either a dinner gift certificate. The hotels will do one-night stays, which is just phenomenal. We do a lot of like sports museum. We had one at a Chicago sports museum, and they collect business cards, and so that's their way of getting that contact information and then following up. And we always give them the opportunity to do site tours, and so they'll do tours throughout our event of groups of people and take them along with that. It's really great because we really stress that the assistants are the ones that are booking the venues and the dinner parties, and they are the decision makers on where to put those groups. And we recently had a very high-end hotel host us, and we saw probably close to 100 people attend that event.
Wow.
And they got the business cards, they did the drawing, and their return has been so overwhelming for them, just with night stays and meetings, and they have offered a promotional code to all of our members for a yearly rate.
Nice.
That we now can give.
Yeah, it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, because they got buying power. And Ike, you said you had an example of why vendors should reach out to EA networks.
So the venues, the restaurants, the event and meeting spaces have budgets for marketing, and slices of that marketing budget need to be allocated to directly marketing to the individuals who are going to be booking that space. And if a person starting an external networking group can sell that to the venue and explain to them, you're not just giving us something for free, I'm bringing a bunch of people who are key decision makers on board meetings and annual events and Christmas parties and planning events for their executives' children, you show the potential for a return on investment from, 2 events per person. If you're bringing 20 people there and they get 50% of those people to book one event, they're more than paying the expense that they're putting into putting on the event, which is just providing hors d'oeuvres and wine. And you're giving them that select group of people and explaining to them that you've taken the time and due diligence to only have in the group the executive assistants or the types of people who are making those decisions. One of the recent venues that we went to was particular to grill Julie and me during our site visit and said, we're putting money into this event. Who are you bringing to me and why should I have them there? And we're able to tell them we're not just allowing in any administrative assistant, and we're not just bringing in event planners. We're looking specifically at our membership base of people who are going to these events, and it is a business benefit to them to be at the event to see the venue, and you're getting site visits with 20 people who are attending events. And on the flip side, you'll hopefully get the return business. And in the end, it's important to make sure it's a win-win situation for everyone involved.
Yeah. Well, that gives assistants the words to say, because Bonnie's all about speaking up and not being, don't worry about the fear of asking. Just ask and show the benefit to them. And you just gave them the words for that, of how to ask for that sponsorship and donation.
That makes me think, too, the very first event that I organized, that was, I think, just our second event, was with a local restaurant that Chris eats at a lot, so I have a relationship with the owners. Right. And my initial proposition for our first event wasn't, hey, I have this networking group that is, very early on in its stages that I want to bring in, and I want you to host this for free. I went to them and I said, if I get $20 a head and I give you a count and of estimated people 2 days before the event, can you give us an open bar for an hour and a half with 2 red wines, 2 white wines, a beer, and soda? So there's a way to try and get that off the ground, and getting involved with money and transactions might be easy for 1 or 2 events, but it's really important to stick with it. And if an event is only 8 people, that's okay. And if the next event has 10 people and 3 of those people are new, that's how you start expanding, and it's the conversations that you have between events that help informing other people about the group. It's a long process, and it can seem arduous at times, but the return is worth it in the end for the people building that networking group.
Sure.
Do you guys find yourself whenever you're out just for personal dinner or just out on your own, like looking at a venue going, oh, this might be a good one for Reach. Let me just talk to the owners or managers and find out if they'd be interested in hosting us or no?
Julie's probably the queen of that. She does she does site visits. She can speak to it.
I do. I completely agree because if I, in fact, I think it was about a week and a half ago, I went to a new restaurant with dinner with one of our leadership team members, and she had been invited by the general manager there, and we went to dinner, and we ended up talking to them about Reach and, you know, hosting an event, and because it was such a phenomenal restaurant and the food was great. So now we have his business card. They're very interested, and it happens all the time when we are going out. We're like, this would be a really cool spot to have an event. When you have that, and you know that you're looking for venues, it happens all the time. And so you're always asking to see, hey, can I get someone's business card? Or even then, I said, do you have private event space? And they said yes. And I'm like, is it possible that I can look at it? So just a very casual dinner turned into seeing this event space that I had never heard of before.
Well, it seems like it saves a lot of time. So you don't have to go do an actual visit out there before the meeting because you're already familiar with it.
Right, and so then as a perk at the end of the evening, he comped our dinner. Like, wow.
Well done, Julie.
Very nice.
Oh, and Julie has like about 1,000 of those kinds of stories, right? I'm not exaggerating.
Exactly.
That. Yeah.
So that's how. And that's kind of how we also end up with a waiting list of venues and vendors that want to host us. So we try to figure out the best timing of the year to put something like that in.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, you were on a boat. You were on a boat recently, right?
Yes, that was not orchestrated by Ike, but it was the Chicago First Lady Boat Cruise, and it was such a great time. And again, everything was provided to us with the wine and the beer and soda, and they even had a catering company that had reached out to Ike, I believe, and wanted to showcase their catering, not anything associated with the boat cruise. So we actually hooked them up together, and everything was coordinated.
Right. And the unique benefit there was the cruise company didn't have to pay for food, so that was not a cost they were absorbing. The catering company, which had wanted to present to us their catering, had a space to do it in, since they didn't otherwise have a space. And now I believe the cruise company and the catering company may be in conversations about being a preferred catering company for the cruise boat.
So I'm clapping. This is me clapping. I'm so excited.
All three parties benefit. And uniquely enough, that event actually came out of somebody's, in my email signature, I have asked me about Regional Executive Assistance Cocktail Hour in bold right underneath my contact information. And there are a number of executive assistants whom I interact with who ask about it that way, who have helped expand Reach from a membership base. And the boat cruise, I had to email the company about something completely unrelated for Chris, and she asked about that, and we started a conversation, and she asked if we could if they could host an event for us. So it's being aware of putting all of that information out there, and sometimes businesses and companies are going to get it, and they're going to say, this is an opportunity for me to showcase my space that just recently opened that nobody's ever going to hear about, but if I can show 30 of the right people with a small amount of money expense on my part now, if a return comes out of that down the road, it was worth it in the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you guys have a picture of the boat cruise, and we'll include it in this podcast episode on the website because it's adorable. I think. Okay, so now I think we know the value of the network. We know the value of having support from sponsors, and I'm sure our listeners are now thinking, okay, I'm ready. I want to create an external network. How do I do it? What are the steps I need to take to go from the idea to 400 on my list? in 1 year, I know.
I think the very first step is identifying who else is interested in really taking ownership of the project. We've found that our leadership team is really successful because it's 8 or 9 people who are really passionate about the career track, about availing resources to themselves or to colleagues. They want to be involved in building this community. And I think that conversations that are had over the phone about just the idea start getting people really excited about it. And when you have a group of people who want to do it, find a day and find a time. And for executive assistants, that can be incredibly difficult because our own leadership team has had to look 6 weeks out in advance to identify a time. But find a time that all of you can get together at somebody's office or go out to dinner or drinks and set aside 2 hours, because everybody needs to start hashing out ideas. And you need to have a formal meeting. It doesn't need to be a formal board composition yet, and you don't need to take minutes, but you do need to take notes, and you do want to have an agenda of the different areas that you want to talk about. The first area that I think will help frame networking groups to the best effect for a community is, why do you want to create that program? For REACH in Chicago, we want to create an opportunity for people who are in between jobs or have suffered a layoff, and so making available job postings is one thing that we strongly push. We also like to share best practices and software, so some people might find that the way that they organize their inbox or their executive's calendar is not the most effective, and we are committed to connecting people who are strong at organization with those who are looking to improve their organizational skills. Right now, it's sort of on a pause, but we're trying to have a few of the members who are really strong on grammar compose a manual for incredibly common grammar and writing mistakes that maybe that doesn't seem like a super big important deal, but even improving on those bits of information to improve communication style and writing style is a way to help people continue developing professionally.
Sure.
We also like to create an atmosphere for mentorship. I know that, Bonnie, at Be the Ultimate Assistant, you speak often about the importance of having the voice that Vickie's spoken about and having to address, unfortunately at times, workplace bullying, and having people who can mentor you in how to have those conversations or how to discuss your annual review. Those are the sorts of conversations we, as sort of siloed executive assistants, like I've mentioned before, don't have the opportunity to have those conversations. So identifying that as a benefit to the group is important. Once you have those missions identified, once you know exactly why you're doing this group effort or creating this external networking group, the vibe is super important. So I'll try not to spend too much time on it, but the vibe for REACH, I think, has been part of its success. And when I say that, we are incredibly social, but we are at the same time still professional. And we all know that we're there because we're in the same career track, and we all often go there and start out our conversations, how was your day? Oh my gosh, you wouldn't believe the number of travel changes I had to make today, or the number of meetings I had to move today. And once it gets beyond that, you find that people become friendly with one another and they're talking about their families. And in order to keep that vibe of comfort and informality, we are focused on not making vendor presentations at our events, because we feel that that creates a wall between the vendors and the sponsors, if we have a vendor sponsoring, and our membership base. We want the venues that are hosting us to bring along 3 or 4 of their staff members who can talk about the event planning in the space, and we want them to mix in and hang out and talk with us. And because it's fun like that, I think it feels less like a work event and much more like a big opportunity to get together with a bunch of friends who think the same way. And that's why people like coming to the events, and that's why people say, I've heard great things about the REACH events, we want to go there. And knowing that that's your vibe is going to frame how you communicate with your vendors and your sponsors. It will frame how you want to communicate with your membership as time goes on, because you want that vibe of consistency to be the message that people are hearing about when they hear about your networking event. Beyond that, or the next step rather, I would say, is identifying those membership guidelines. What sorts of people are going to be part of your group, and how are you going to define an executive or personal assistant? Event planners, for example, have some responsibilities that we have, but they're not executive assistants. And there are people out there who are office managers that do some of what we do, but they're not executive assistants. And fleshing out that definition will help you think more broadly about the people whom you interact with on a regular basis that you can talk to about joining your networking group, or who can help spread the word as well. What I did when I asked to run my first event was I went through all of my contacts of executive assistants with whom I work on a regular basis based on Chris's colleagues and associates. And I put all of them into a list, and I started a contact group in my Gmail, and I emailed all of them BCC for the first event. I sort of laid out, hey, here's what we're doing. We're going to have drinks on this day for a couple of hours. It gives everybody a chance to meet people you've probably worked with in the city but don't know. Please let me know if you have any other executive assistants whom you'd like to invite, because we're really keen on growing the group. And I think that's a message that's consistent, is we always ask REACH members to spread the word and to let me know, or let Julie know, or let Katie know, or whoever else is on the leadership team know. If you have people that should be part of this group, we want them, because the more people we have in this group, the more benefit we have having more people, and the better opportunity we have to present to venues a larger audience for them to be marketing to. Another opportunity to expand that membership base is to be mindful of recruiters that you might have previous relationships with who maybe helped you get your current job, talking to them about the networking group, because they can help you network with executive assistants that are seeking work, and the recruiters are also people who can vet the type of candidate whom you've outlined to be the right part of your group. One thing that we started out doing that we're now transitioning away from was I sort of housed everything on my computer. I manage the contact list. I create invitations in an online invitation website, and I send that out to everybody. And that was great to start with, but as the group grew, it meant that all of the emails for job descriptions to send out, and all of the emails for event ideas, and all of the emails about best practices were coming to me, and that's incredibly overwhelming to deal with when you're running an executive support desk as it is. Well, before our leadership team started identifying an opportunity for other people to take on events, or take on pieces rather, I immediately went to Julie and I said, I know one thing that you're great at, and I need you to do it. I want you to do it. I want you to take on events, because she runs them so much better than I do, and that is a skill that I think she not only is great at, but she enjoys doing. And I don't personally, that's not of the things I could be doing for REACH my favorite. And so I surrendered that to her with absolute pleasure, and then went to a couple of other leadership members and said, does anybody want to help get a website going? Because I don't have the IT back-end knowledge to be informed about how to go about that process, but I have end-user knowledge, so I would be happy to offer my suggestions once it's created. But there were people in the group who do have that IT knowledge, and one of whom was actually taking a class on web building, so it was an opportunity for her to take a skill that she was working on and that she enjoyed executing and put that towards something that could be built into REACH. I love communication, so I enjoy taking on the communication piece, but I don't enjoy communicating with members who repeatedly RSVP to events but aren't able to attend. And that's something that we need to figure out why that's happening to improve perhaps our process, but there was somebody else in the leadership group who was passionate about finding that out. So finding out what people do, what they do well, and what they like doing is key to building proficient people. And Bonnie, remind me, I think you have a quote that relates to expertise that...
Oh, I think you're thinking about what Olympia used to say to me, is that, Bonnie, you don't have to be an expert in everything, but you do need to know who the experts are to go to get the answers we need, and fast.
Right, and I love that.
Yeah, I mean, it just says it. And, you know, this workplace of 2016 and beyond is very complicated and only getting more so. So, you know, anybody who's serious about being an assistant in this workplace has got to belong to at least one organization. You know, the highest level assistants I know, whether they work for celebrities or CEOs, whoever, they know a lot. They know a whole lot, but they're so much more powerful when they have a network of, you know, a group of people who they can call upon. Nobody can handle it all. Nobody gets there alone. It's so important.
And that's one of the exercises we do in B2A, Bonnie, in all of your different classes, that you ask people to introduce themselves and name one thing they do really well.
Yeah, it just makes so much sense. You know, I talked about this profession can feel very siloed, very lonely, and these networks are a way to not feel so lonely. That was my driving factor about New York Celebrity Assistants. It was like, oh my gosh, I finally got to be in a room with other people who did what I did. You know, you begin to feel a little bit like an alien, or, you know, like a way. And actually at BTUA, we often get that piece of feedback that assistants love coming simply to understand that they're not alone. You know, they know it. They know they're not alone, but to be, you know, on that boat with you in Chicago, you know, at that restaurant, to really feel like you're among your tribe, other professions have that, but the land of executive assisting, personal assisting does not have a long track record of having that at all.
Right. And I think, too, along that line, and something else that I think makes Reach, if nothing else other than fun, but also successful, is I'm a huge fan of doing brain dumps, and I think it's really important that your close colleagues and your close friends create a safe space for one another, for everybody to share suggestions, ideas, and criticisms. And Reach is not, by any stretch of the imagination, run solely by me. It is very much Julie's child and very much the baby of the other 8 women or 7 women who help run Reach, and it's because all of them have the opportunity to contribute and to offer suggestions. And I am of the mindset that an organization for assistance is best created by assistants. And I am grateful to have everybody's input, because I think when all of them are contributing any of their ideas for all of us to then sort through, that is the best way you find out what works and what doesn't work. You need to establish that opportunity, especially for something that's new and that's growing. You're going to have hiccups, and you're going to run into situations where you deal with something the way that you didn't intend to, or an event goes wonky in some unpredicted way, and having that support team of a leadership group is really, really important that you lean on.
Well, it's that sense of ownership. The strongest organizations, the ones with staying power, no one person can make it happen. I mean, the beauty of it is to have all these on the leadership team, these experts in different areas who all have their sense of ownership. Julie has ownership of the programming, which is great.
Okay, so Ike, I'm curious, with our Austin network, we're seeing, 200 on our list, but we don't have very many people attending the meetings. Can you give me and our listeners and all of us an idea of what we should expect as far as the numbers, the interest levels from EAs wanting to join the network? How did it grow? And because everyone's now so excited about Reach, but you didn't get there overnight.
Right. I would say that our first year or two, at a point that we had 200 plus people on the list, and we were inviting those people through the online invitation process we used, had an RSVP, and I would say maybe 75 would RSVP out of 200, and you would have 20 or 25 show up. I remember one summer event, we had 65 people RSVP and like 12 showed up. And part of that is finding the right day and time. For us, we found that Thursdays from 6 to 8 once a month works well. But it's also important to know what other big events are going on in the city, if there's a sports game or if it's certain Jewish holidays or certain Muslim or Christian holidays, to obviously work around those as well. But the expansion process at the start, when we were just putting in everyone's name that we knew in the first big mass email, I would say you have diluted membership at that point. So the number is not going to reflect the number of people who are interested. It really takes culling conversations with individuals to talk about Reach to help generate that interest. And there have been times that I have reached out to people who I wanted to get involved in Reach because I knew they had contacts who would probably benefit from Reach. And I would email that person and say, hey, I've got this networking group that I'm a part of. Can we set up 20 minutes on Friday to talk, or can I meet you for coffee? And I think that shows that you're serious about it. Mm-hmm. And that is, it's important to get certain sort of vector contacts out there. If you get the executive assistant to a CEO of a company that has 2,500 employees, chances are there are other executive assistants there. And that person is going to be open to bringing people on board or referring Reach to those people. Now we have 400 plus members who are on our distribution list. I would say maybe 200 of those are actively engaged, meaning that they're responding to emails and or are attending events. And I would say 2 events ago, Julie and I had sent out the invitation, and within 2 hours we were up to 85 people saying they were going to be there. Within 3 days, the RSVP count had risen up to 145 people, and we usually send out invites about a month in advance. And so we had sent out the invite, had 145 people RSVP, and the event's still 3.5 weeks out. So our process, if an event is on a Thursday, is to send out a reminder email the week before, the Thursday before, but only to the people who have not RSVP'd, whether they've opened it and not RSVP'd or not opened it and said, hey, just as an FYI, we sent you this invite, we hope you can make it. And you've got to make it encouraging. People like feeling like they are part of the network, and you want them to. And so when we send out that reminder, you get a deluge of people who suddenly have the opportunity, who realize, hey, you're paying attention to the fact that I'm not RSVPing, so I'm going to RSVP now. And sometimes that'll, net you 20 more people saying yes, and a number of people will say no. And people oftentimes will say, I can't go because I've got to go to my daughter's graduation, or I can't go because I am working an event late that night. And I try to be mindful of responding to each of those messages and saying, oh, have a great time in Tennessee, congratulations to your daughter. And trying to remember that for 145 people is not easy, if not impossible. But building those little pieces of, that's not just me building information to have without concern. I love the opportunity to know bits and pieces about what's going on in different people's lives, and they like knowing that on the other end of the email or at the other side of the cocktail table at a REACH event, they're talking to somebody who is a human and a person who understands family and other things outside of a job.
Right.
So circling back, reminder to everybody who hasn't RSVP'd on Thursday before the event. Tuesday, 2 days before the event, I send a reminder to everybody who has RSVP'd, because we want a more accurate count for the venue to properly prepare food, drink, and staff. And we tell the venue when we're planning the event, going through the initial conversation, that this is our timeline. And so on Tuesday, after we email the people attending, that is when you have 30% of the people fall off. Within 2 hours, 30% of the people say, I'm sorry, I can't make it, a work things come up, I've got to be out of town, my cat's sick. There are a variety of reasons that are shorter-term reasons that they had not anticipated when they first RSVP'd. So suddenly you're from 145 people down to 101 people. And then I also have a reminder in the system to remind you the day before the event or the day of the event, or sometimes I'll email the morning of the event, and you get 25 more people fall off. And then you've got 10 people who email you saying, oh, I wish I could go, but it looks like I'm going to stay late. So you end up looking at probably a 40 to 45% drop-off from the peak of your RSVP count to the number of people who are going to attend. Please don't let that disillusion you, because that is just the nature of events, and particularly in the careers that we lead, it can be very difficult for people to commit and stick with it, depending on how demanding their job is.
Right.
I mean,
did that answer your question, Vicki? I feel like that didn't.
No. My head, I'm processing because I'm doing the numbers in my head. I think that is very realistic, because for me to RSVP for something 6 weeks out is I'll be there. But life happens, and it's easier for me to RSVP a week out because my schedule is a little bit more defined. So I think that everyone is in that same position. But knowing those numbers, it does help alleviate the stress and the worry, like, what are we doing wrong? Why are 45% attrition of no-shows? Do people actually un-RSVP, like they say, I can't make it, so it actually drops the number? Or are they just emailing you saying, hey, I can't make it, and you have to manually? I mean, do you have a system that's actually dropping the numbers down for you, or manually?
The online website we use, paperless post, allows me to personally email each individual with the reminder to RSVP or change to RSVP, and a link in that email to go in and adjust their RSVP. Every time somebody emails me and says I can't make it, I will go in and make sure they've adjusted their RSVP, because the user interface sometimes can be funny and they won't update their RSVP, but I'll try and keep track of that. And I'll also go through, if there are people who have been to a number of events or that I have a lot of conversation with about REACH and they have opened it but not RSVP'd, I will personally email them. And people I'm personally emailing them because I want to see them, but people also love getting a personal email saying, hey, I want to see you.
Right.
And that's what makes it's really fostering that personal touch and experience that I so much love with everything that happens at REACH.
Well, good, because that's going to be helpful, is to have that website, because that way you're not manually doing it, because it helps the person just change their mind if they need to. So, right, Julie, exactly. Did you have something to say?
Yes, I wanted to add that recently we really started to push on the invitation that does go out, and then the reminders that are sent out. We really do push the importance of the accuracy of their RSVP, because of, again, the fact that the venues are hosting us, and we are providing this at no cost to the member. And so the count is to try and get it as accurate as we can. really is helping the venue and establishing that relationship for our organization, that we can give them as close as a count as possible.
Is it working, Julie?
So they're not, yes, we are starting, we really started just doing it within the past few months, but we are starting to see that it really is helping, pushing that note out. Yes,
that's awesome.
Definitely.
Another thing that I do is I try to email everybody in Reach once a week or maybe once every other week. And knowing how flooded everyone's inboxes are, I consolidate it almost in a newsletter format, but it's very simple underline headers of job opening, Reach member request for a singer, Reach member request for a restaurant, software suggestion from Reach member. And I get a lot of positive feedback from people who maybe aren't using all that information but like to know that that information is being shared or hear reaffirmation that what they're doing makes sense or is the right thing to do. And in those emails, at the start of it, I probably am not pushing it as much right now because we're expanding so quickly, luckily, but I always said anybody who works with executive assistants or has a friend who's an executive assistant, please get them in contact with me if you think they'd like to be added to our list and invited to our events. And that was the big way that we sort of expanded our membership, was by encouraging people on a very regular basis in all of those emails, contact us, we're expanding, we appreciate it. And anytime somebody would refer another person to me, it's important to be grateful to that person about it because they are an extension of marketing for you and they're not even on the leadership team necessarily. The power of the referral is incredible in so many elements of life.
It's a great idea.
It actually does sound, all of these ideas are so wonderful. I have to say, honestly, how many hours a week do you put in on this?
I would say that I probably put more hours in a week sometimes than I do, but I try to spend 5 hours a week on it, I would say. Mm-hmm. Lately, that's been a little more difficult because of work obligations, and as a result, Julie, I know, also handles a lot because anytime somebody emails me for an event recommendation space, I immediately copy Julie and I say, Julie's handling this, I appreciate it, Julie, take over. And Julie is really, really good about her. She has thoughtful emails, I know she has conference calls and site visits. Julie, you probably spend more time than I do just given the nature of what you're dealing with, probably.
Yes, I would say on the upfront end of it, as soon as a venue reaches out to us, that I'm either arranging a scheduling time to meet with them or talk with them on the phone. So it could be within 1 week if, like, we had 3 venues that I was trying to coordinate which month was going to work out. I blocked off a time and, like with phone calls, and it might have taken an hour and a half just on one day just to have those initial conversations with them. So, it is time consuming, but when you know the return and the importance of it, you find a way to make it work. Yeah. But like I've had a very heavy workload, especially the last couple months. And so I've had a couple of members of our leadership team that have taken over working out a couple other venues that I just have not had an opportunity to get back to. So I have that where I know that they will step in and pick up that I'm not able to get to.
Yeah, and I imagine as you grow, you're going to need that. You totally are going to need the backup.
Yes, but there's never a day that doesn't go by that something doesn't come through related to Reach. And so Ike and I will also be like, hey, do you have time to respond to this, or do you want me to respond to it? So we're usually communicating pretty much every day on who's going to handle it. So.
Right. And I have in my inbox, I've got a Reach folder where I have venue suggestions, and then I also have one called Next Email. Anytime somebody sends me a job description or request, hey, in your next email, can you ask this? I just dump it in there. And on a Thursday that I finally get to my email, I've got 7 harvested items that I can put into that little newsletter formatted email. And I let people know that I get it, but getting it out of my inbox helps me organizedly not try and start something with Reach and then go back to work and back and forth, and you're working less efficiently that way. But it's important if you're trying to establish the external network that sometimes it takes times on evenings, and sometimes it takes times on weekends. And There are days that I don't do that, and I have other personal things I have to tend to, but I try to carve out personal time because it really is a personal and professional growth investment of time now that is paying off in higher efficiency down the road. And that's why it's definitely a put your nose down and focus on it at times thing, and it's worth it.
Cool.
Yeah, I'm glad you asked that, Bonnie, because it's the reality of being on the leadership team. And I think it's important for people to know that the commitment level is 2 to 5 hours a week potentially.
Right.
When starting up, I think that's reasonable.
And what's clear with Julie and Ike is it's a labor of love. I know it was with New York Celebrity Assistant. I did programming for that organization, and Julie is doing something that she's really, really good at. And Ike loves systems, so managing the emails and doing the lists. I mean, that comes naturally for him where it wouldn't about the programming, right, Ike?
Absolutely right, and that's where it's just it can be a humbling experience to realize what you're not great at, but it's such an empowering experience to know that you can identify that about yourself and that you can ask somebody to share in the greater thing with you and do it in a way that makes you proud of the end result.
Yeah.
Well, this has been great, guys. I feel like I've selfishly gotten a lot out of this personally, and I know my
so glad we can help you, Vickie.
Thanks for dedicating all this time. I know that the leadership team in Austin is going to really appreciate this, so thank y'all for this. And now that I know that that takes about 5 hours of time per week, now I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys, we've interrupted your reach time. Asking you to be on the part of this podcast. So thank you for your commitment to sharing your story. Before, Bonnie, I hand it on over to you, I wanted to ask you both, Ike and Julie, are you willing to help others who are interested in learning how to create their own external network? And if so, how should listeners reach out to you? What's your preferred method of communication?
I am happy to connect on LinkedIn. I do not use LinkedIn often for messaging, so if there's a way to provide my email address, that is the best way to communicate with me, and I welcome the opportunity to have those connections, and maybe if enough people reach out, we can just set up a conference call and compare notes for a few different cities about how to get things going and make things better.
Perfect. Jules?
I agree as well. You can connect with me through LinkedIn, and I am the same way where I will reach out back through email, and always accessible with any type of questions, and agree with Ike about getting on a conference call. We are very open to seeing any type of organization across the globe succeed. And it's all about partnership and working together because, we could be sitting here in Chicago and need some help in Europe. And if we have a connection, we definitely would reach out. And I just really think it's very passionate and very worthwhile to belong to an organization.
Right.
That's great. And we will definitely add your LinkedIn profiles on the page as well as your contact information. And we would ask if you do connect with Ike and Julie, just in your message, your connection message to them, let them know that you found out about them through the podcast so that they know how you learned about them. And I just think you guys are going to be a great resource for any EAs that around the world that need help for Chicago contacts or resources, because their executives might be traveling to Chicago. So I'm sure you've got vendors and suppliers you could definitely put EAs in touch with that don't live here.
Right.
Good. All right, Bonnie.
The world has become very, very small.
So Ike, as we wrap up this part 2 of these podcast episodes, do you have some final words for us?
Sure. I, in growing reach and in many parts of my life, believe that collaboration, capitalizing on strengths, and good diversity of perspective are what help people grow and succeed, and in context of an external network really help us advance our personal and professional developments as assistants, and that is why I care so much about ensuring that people have the platform from which to do so.
Wow, and we thank you so much for doing it. It's so great. And Julie, what final thoughts do you have for us? So I have a networking provided on philosophy that I go by each day, and I want to pass these on to you. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. That is an African proverb. And the last one is, it is literally true that you can succeed best and quickest by helping others to succeed, by Napoleon Hill.
Fabulous.
Love it.
So true. And I know you both really walk this talk, and as you know, Vickie and I do as well. So thank you both so much. It's been such a pleasure.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much, Ike and Julie. So this concludes today's episode. We'd love your feedback, topic ideas, and questions. Visit the podcast page at betheultimateassistant.com. Thank you once again to our guests, Ike Saunders and Julie Kavanaugh, and to you for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye, Bonnie.
Bye, Vickie.
Bye, Julie and I. Bye. Bye, everyone.
Bye.